Today, I'll be rating all of my project management jobs in IT and tech that I've had throughout my career. I'm going to be rating them on difficulty and stress, and giving them scores from 1 to 5, where 1 is the easiest and 5 is the hardest. And then I'm going to give them a job satisfaction score, which I'll calculate based on how difficult and stressful the job was in relation to how much I actually got paid for the job. I'm also going to give a super brief explanation for each job and kind of talk a little bit about why I scored them the way that I did. So if you're interested in working in IT or in IT tech project management, this video will probably be interesting to you and maybe give you some idea of what you can expect once you enter the workforce. Or if you just want to be entertained by me complaining about my past jobs, then definitely keep watching. And before we get started, I just want to say that I have a whole bunch of free resources and training to help you become a project manager in my free community. So if you go to school.com/TESL, you can get started on your journey to becoming a well-paid six-figure project manager as well right now. So jumping straight into the first job that I had, which was actually more of a customer service and sales rep position, but I was given extra responsibility to be the in-store project lead. So when there were new phone launches and it went from companies like Motorola and Samsung, I was the one that they worked with to get all that stuff set up. Now this job was very easy, very fun, very low stress, but it was also a very low salary, resulting in kind of a low overall job value. But I did enjoy the job a lot. I made a lot of friends, and actually the sales and customer service skills that I learned here have actually been very vital to my success in the later on roles that I had as a project manager. And by the way, if you're curious how the job value is being calculated here, it's by dividing the hourly rate by the sum of the level of difficulty and stress. So yes, I'm making an assumption here that we all want jobs that are very easy, that have a low or no stress and pay the most, which to me means a very high job value or job satisfaction score. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe some of you like difficult jobs more because you prefer the challenge and that's more meaningful to you, but this is how I'm going to be rating them. The next job I had was my first real corporate job working for a German security company in their mobile devices and payment securities division. And here I was working as a project coordinator, doing lots of documentation, creating workflows, and coordinating new product launches. And I'm going to be giving this job a 3 out of 5 for both difficulty and stress, primarily because this was my first time in a corporate environment. And so adjusting to the new way of working and being in an office, because of those reasons, I'd say that it was a bit harder and more stressful for me. I was also constantly being assessed by my manager since it was a 1-year contract, and the pay was not good at all, only $20 an hour. And so the overall job value here was very low. But I still learned a lot in this job, and it was my first exposure to a corporate environment, and it prepared me for my future roles in project management. The next 3 jobs I had were all at the same company, so I'm going to talk about them together. At BMO, the Bank of Montreal, which is one of the 5 major banks in Canada, I started off as an IT project coordinator, working alongside other project coordinators and project managers for coordinating the deployment of new IT equipment like computers and monitors and scanners and printers across all of the bank's retail branches in the US. This job was definitely not stressful because being on a team of other project coordinators, the tasks and responsibilities were shared pretty evenly. However, it was a little difficult because we were dealing with a lot of data and everything was being managed in Excel. And at this time, my Excel skills were not that great. Overall, however, this job gets a job satisfaction score of 7. Now, after 6 months in this role, I was offered the lead IT project coordinator role with significantly more pay, but more responsibility and more accountability, which meant more stress. So this job gets a satisfaction score of 8.3 because of the increase in salary. The next 2 jobs I had were more of an implementation project manager role for a retail company called Canadian Tire. And basically the first 6-month project that I was on was to set up new IT infrastructure in all of their stores so they could offer home delivery for tens of thousands of items from their website. Here, I was working with cabling vendors, general contractors, equipment manufacturers, and just tracking that everything was set up and deployed correctly inside each store. This job was probably one of the most stressful jobs that I had up to now, primarily because I was dealing with things that I had no idea about, dealing with cabling and VLAN and network ports and MAC addresses, and working with technical teams to bring equipment online. However, this job forced me to learn quickly, and it's the same knowledge and skills that I learned here that I was then able to bring over to my future roles. The next 6-month contract that I had with this company, I got a pretty decent pay bump, and this time I was managing the deployment of new PIN pad terminals across several dozens of their retail locations. The stress and difficulty, I'd say, were the same, but because of the pay increase, the overall job value or satisfaction increased all the way up to 7.5 compared to 6 when I was just making 42 bucks an hour. The next 4 jobs I had were all at Walmart, working as a technology project manager with the store innovation team, planning the deployment and implementation of new technologies like electronic price labels or proof of concept type technologies like automated inventory tracking systems. Now, I was there for a little over 3 years, and so I also did a lot of your more standard projects like your Wi-Fi and infrastructure upgrade and refresh projects. And I actually have a whole video detailing my experience and the various projects that I worked on at Walmart. And so if you're curious or interested to know in more detail what I was doing with the actual Excel files and trackers that I was using, then I recommend you go and watch that video. Working at Walmart was hands down one of the best experiences I had, especially early on when I was getting started with them. The work was fairly easy for me, and since I had a good amount of experience now from the other past projects that I had already completed, I was a lot more comfortable and confident with working with vendors and tracking things in Excel, and had a better idea of some of the IT and technical side of things as well. Job satisfaction here at Walmart was above a 10, primarily due to the low difficulty and manageable stress levels, and also with a decent hourly rate that kept going up at each contract renewal. Now you'll see the job satisfaction start to go down a little bit towards the last contract that I had with them. And this was primarily due to a major change in leadership and organizational restructuring. And so as new people came into the company, the culture started to change and they started to scrutinize each project more and ask more questions and request more things from each of the project managers. The job got quite stressful towards the end. However, I was still making quite a bit of money on an hourly basis. So overall, towards the end, the job satisfaction for my role as a tech PM at Walmart was a 9.6. The last 3 roles or contracts that I did were as an IT project manager for a company called Integer. Here I was modernizing IT and tech equipment, so things like computers and scanners and label printers that were connected to the company's critical manufacturing equipment. So to give you an example, the company might have a big measurement machine that they use in their production process and it's connected to IT equipment like a computer. So my job was to upgrade the IT equipment, the computer from Windows XP to Windows 11. And in many cases, that meant that we had to also update the machinery because the old machinery was not compatible with the new version of Windows. And because we were working in an FDA regulated environment, it meant we had to go through quality and validation processes and notify customers of any changes and get approvals. And this made the job very hard. And on top of that, the culture at this company was very old school and very engineering focused. And the stakeholders that I had to work with across all the different manufacturing sites made it very stressful as well. Most of the stakeholders didn't care about the project at all. They were just focused on manufacturing and getting product out the door. And they saw this IT project as kind of like a nuisance for them and something that didn't really have an immediate impact to the plant's revenue or sales. However, this role paid the most out of all the other jobs. And even though towards the end, the difficulty and stress got up to a 5, because the pay was so good, the overall job value was a 12.3. And I definitely do it again simply because of the pay. Okay, hopefully you found that interesting to see what kind of different positions are out there and how much they could pay. Let's try and see if there are any correlations between the job difficulty and stress level and the pay level. So I actually had a pretty decent pay at Walmart, given that I was making over 6 figures and the difficulty and stress were not that high. And this seems to be a sweet spot if you're not super focused on just making a lot of money and looking for a good balance of something that's a little challenging, has manageable stress, and good pay. There are lots of project manager jobs like this out there, but I think it will vary a lot from company to company and the culture inside of those companies as well. One other thing to note is that there does seem to be a loose correlation between the amount of stress and the amount of pay. And the stress usually comes from being given more responsibility and accountability. Remember that project managers are ultimately accountable for the success or failure of the project. And so the more responsibility and accountability you're given, the more stressful your job becomes, and you're likely going to be compensated for it with higher pay. So there you go. Hopefully you found this video helpful or at least entertaining. I do want to remind you guys that I have a free community where you can get started to learn how to become a project manager. And I also have a paid program where you can actually manage real projects like a Salesforce CRM integration project or a Cisco AV decommissioning project and actually get hands-on experience on your resume. So I recommend you check those out. Many people have gone through them and have found jobs afterwards. I think it's pretty high quality. So do take a look if you're serious about getting into project management. That's it for now. I'll see you on the next one.